Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Memorial Day week.
Yeah, well, we're waiting for some good weather. I don't know. I mean, is it me or was that like one of the wettest Memorial Day weekends in recent memory?
I was a sports writer for a long time, so like you're acutely aware of the weather because Memorial Day is the heart of playoffs for baseball and softball, spring sports, high school especially, and in college. And so Memorial Day is actually a day of pretty terrible weather around here over the years. There's been a lot of Memorial Day weekends that have been like that. I don't know about that, but having said that, I don't know if it's been that comprehensively terrible. I mean, it rained, every hour for days and days and days. You know, it's like I was getting ready to build an ark.
That's right. It was biblical proportions. It kind of almost felt right.
Yeah.
Your wife's from Seattle, so this is probably not that big a deal to her. But even she must think sometimes it's like how much rain do we want here? I mean, it's the rain actually needs to be in the west, right? I mean, they're
Well, we
starving
needed
for
to.
water.
We're in a drought too.
Yeah,
And this was
but
a soaker like we really haven't had in a long time. It's been a long time since we had sustained rain and everything could really get wet. You get a few flash showers. A lot of times that, especially when it's really dry, that rolls off. It doesn't even sink in much, right? But this was enough rain to where it sinked in. And the other thing about it is I was out on the porch this morning drinking coffee, and man, all the green has filled in. It's as lush as it can be right now. So that's good. That's.
yeah, I mean, I will admit, I mean, when we returned from our trip, I mean, the lawn was not quite high yet. We had had it cut before we left, but there hadn't really been any precipitation while we were gone. And it's like it looks okay, it looks pretty good. And now it's really green and getting really high, and I'm kind of like, I had put in a request to my lawn guy to come last week, but obviously, the lawn people have been kind of rained out,
Yeah.
waiting for some weather that they can actually come out and cut the grass. So I think we're going to get a little bit better weather, but even today it's been raining. So
Yeah, it's gonna rain today. I think after today it stops for a while. So
we need some chance to dry out. Now it hasn't. We've seen some periods where it hasn't been raining, which is good because I think that helps with reducing some of the risk of flooding in some areas. But it's still a lot. We still got a lot of rain, and it really kind of knocked me. Normally I go and visit my parents' graves, but it was just the weather was just so terrible. And we're like, uh, this is the first year in quite a while that I haven't done that. I kind of feel a little bit guilty for this. I got probably need to make that up pretty quickly, and all. But yeah, it's been quite the thing. All right, so it is National Grape Day. Are you a grape guy?
you know what? Those things are. It's like they're. I don't like to buy them because it's you're going to sit there and eat them all, right? It's not like you'll have grapes for several days. It's like there's going to be a sitting when it's you and the grapes, and that's the end of the grapes. So that's one. It's like like they used to say about the chips, nobody can eat just one. That's where I am on grapes.
Do what kind of grapes do you like though? I mean, you like the green grapes or
No,
like
I
the
like the green ones.
okay.
They're the least danger of biting into a seed. And I don't want seed.
Well, we've been kind of spoiled too. I don't know when seedless, fruits came along like that, stuff like that. But I mean, growing up as a kid, that's all you always had seed. I mean, watermelon, right? Was always
Yeah.
full of seeds. Now there's seedless varieties of things that used to have lots of seeds, and it's like, boy, that's like a godsend because like that means you can eat more of that because the seeds always, yeah, I don't like seeds.
Yeah,
And
and
when
the
I'm
what? Yeah, I don't like surprises like in food.
eating.
And the watermelon seeds, like it's one of the few times it's acceptable. Maybe it's because I was a kid. It's one of the few times it's acceptable in society to spit a seed.
That's right.
You get a watermelon, you go.
Right.
Really.
That's right. That was very, very, very common with doing
No,
that.
no class required there for a second.
Well, yeah, this is as we move closer to the summer. I mean, I think this is one of the things that I am going to enjoy are just fruit. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
we're going to see a lot of fruit come out that'll be in season, and so I'm looking forward to that. But we've already started with the grapes. I'm waiting for the strawberries to really come in and
Right.
come in.
The strawberries I've seen in the store so far, not no bueno.
Yeah,
But
right. Well,
yeah, keep
we've
my
gotten
eye on that.
we've gotten snooty in our household here, even though there are only two of us. Is that you know Costco basically stocks these things, strawberries almost year round, but there's one brand, Driscoll Farms, that is really more of a summer,
Yeah,
type of thing, and they're really hard to get otherwise. And then they'll stock other ones, but there's nothing for us that matches that particular label. So and so we kind of tend to like, well, we've tried the other varieties. This is definitely the best, and so I think we will reserve our money to spend on strawberries until the Driscoll Farms comes in to Costco in greater numbers and everything like that. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, that should be starting to happen. I mean, we're getting to summer finally. Like I
yeah,
noticed this morning, I was up early and like it's fully daylight at 5 in the morning.
yeah, I like that. I do like that
Yeah,
one, because I'm up at the gym and I'm early, and it's not. I prefer driving when, yeah, I mean, I'm still driving in the dark to get there, but when I leave, it's daylight, which is
yeah,
nice. At my age, it's just safer.
yeah. I hear you.
Well, and all that. All right. Enough of that stuff. My wife says I chat too much anyway, but hey, whatever. It's my show.
That's right.
I've kept it down today.
At least she's
Um,
watching.
yeah, I don't know if she's watching or she's napping today. Um, last week one of the things we discussed really briefly was the Maryland governor's race, and so it had me thinking. Since we had talked about that, because you asked about the candidates and whatnot, and I went back and I looked, and I'm like, there are like I think 8 people running on the Republican side, and a couple of names are familiar to me and things like that. But nobody really stands out as someone who's going to beat Wes Moore, which is the real issue. Um, so I don't. There's a guy named Brian Griffith, and he used to be a Republican in the state of Maryland, had a whole shebang, podcast and a bunch of stuff that was geared around Republican politics. And then Trump got elected and he got disillusioned and basically left the party like so many others did. And then he kind of quit politics, or at least reduced it. And he reintroduced himself under a Substack called the Duck Pin, and now he's back to commenting on politics where he had gone away from politics. And so he puts out this Substack about the endorsing for Maryland governor, and you read through this, and he at the end he says we endorse nobody, because his process is that you eliminate everybody who was somebody else's running mate before. He says, boom, that reduces the field from 8 to 3. Okay. This was just his
Okay.
methodology. And then he looked at the 3 remaining, and one of them who's putting on a big show and throwing a lot of money into the race, or at least more than the others, is a guy who until a year ago was a Democrat and was writing checks to the Democrats, right? So he switched parties. He's running for governor. Where have we heard this script before? In our politics. So he's out there, and he could win. I mean, Dan Cox is there. Brian gave Cox some, some actual plaudits, I guess, or whatever, some credit for the fact that he is not running the kooky 22 campaign all over again, but he still has the 22, campaign baggage that he has to deal with. So therefore, and then there was another guy who's not really having much traction at all, not raising any money. So he basically came down to endorsing no one. So I think my read now really is that chances are that it may come down to this guy, the former Democrat Ed Hale, and then Dan Cox. Uh, and if Dan Cox actually stays and sounds like a reasonable person and not like the kook he sounded like in 2022, yeah, he might have a decent showing. Will he beat Westmore? I think I agree with Brian. It's like none of these guys are going to beat Westmore at this stage.
Really? Because I mean, it seems like he's not even popular with Democrats.
Yeah, but you know, I mean,
any of them is better than any of us, I guess. But
he's still a better candidate than what the Democrats had traditionally run against, you know, Larry Hogan, and then when Bob Ehrlich won. You know, that all those guys took advantage of some really bad candidates on the Democrats' part, and you know, some good policies that they were, you know, they were running themselves as governor. I mean, they even you know, Ehrlich, who is a conservative, moderated somewhat to get his message across. But you know, but Ehrlich's a pretty good conservative. You know, Larry Hogan, you know, stayed really squarely in the middle. You know, ran away from Trump and he you know, and he blasted O'Malley's taxes. Now, Cox, if he can make the same kind of play on taxes that Larry Hogan did, maybe he's got a better shot, because the Democrats, you know, and you've seen this in Virginia too, with, you know, when Democrats take over, they start to run roughshod over the rest of the population and say tax increase, this policy change, this, that, and the other. Yeah. And so that's what happens. What's happened in Maryland. And so for those that are sick and tired of that, and they're definitely liberals and Democrats that are tired of that. I definitely see it in Montgomery County. And, you know, if liberals in Montgomery County are getting upset with the taxes and all the stuff that's happening with local politics, it's, you know, it's as worse, if not as bad enough worse, you know, for the state, because, you know, the Democrats are choking.
I feel them saying, "What am I getting for my money?"
Right.
Right, and being deeply dissatisfied with the answer. And so, and I'm looking at Westmore, and I'm thinking if somebody got a hold of that candidate, that Republican candidate, and did it right, it's like, you know, you have no progress on the bridge, right? The bridge they've not done one thing on fixing that bridge, right? And that's a symbol of the just incompetence of the whole thing. You know, I don't think, you know, and he's made a lot of people in his own party mad. I don't think it's you know, will he probably win? Yeah, he'll probably win, right? But you know, I don't think the door is the crack in the door is as small as it usually is. You know, I think he's been found, is kind of like Obama. He's kind of been found to be without substance, right? Looks good, makes all the right moves, but it's like, okay, I'm looking for you to finish something, and I don't really see it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he's been running around the state. I can't remember, you know, kind of like we're working. I can't remember the exact name of the campaign, the slogan for this little tour around Maryland about, you know, kind of we're working for you or something like that, trying to do these little showy little things about proving, you know, what the Moore administration has done, you know, since you know, in this first term. One of the things, you know, was, you know, this big to do about, you know, stuff on the Purple Line. This whole light rail system, which was, you know, Larry Hogan made a huge mistake by pushing that forward, because it's been nothing but a boondoggle. I mean, it's, you know, it's right, way over budget. You know, it will probably get completed, you know, at a cost to taxpayers that's just an obscene amount of money, and things have changed.
What is really the need? I mean, is there a growth in transportation between Bethesda and Silver Spring? You know, we could get so much more blank if we had this. I mean, I've never really seen what are they trying to accomplish there. It seems like that was a lot of sacrifice for not much benefit.
Well, you know, Democrats who initially pushed this, I mean, you know, they love public transportation projects, right?
Right.
And public transportation, I mean, there is a need for some of it, but it is a money losing proposition.
I think the last time I read, Maryland had spent like $100 billion on mass transit, and they've reduced traffic by less than 1%.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't. The people who got to drive got to drive.
I mean, in Montgomery County, I mean, they've made the ride-on buses like free, right? It's like there's like a no fare. I'm like, okay, so who's paying for that? I don't ride the ride. It's been decades since I've been on a ride-on bus, but I'm now subsidizing everybody else who does. And I don't think ridership is all that high to begin with now anyway. I think post-pandemic public transportation has suffered. I mean, the ridership has dropped through the floor. People work from home. There's a lot of different things that people do, and so you don't get the ridership. Metro's ridership was way down, and but the infrastructure's there, and it costs a lot of money. Montgomery County with the buses, they're not going to be willing. They make it free to try to see if they can boost ridership because they don't want to cut it back and have to say, oh, and go against the union and fire, bus drivers and idle buses because, they're supposed to be about job creation and do all this stuff. But all of these things add up and cost us money. The purple line, what is it going to do? It's not really going to do a darn thing. Just like COVID had done to everything else in public transportation, the ridership is going to be even lower than way lower than they projected because there's just not enough. Like you said, there's no real need. It doesn't solve a problem that's there.
Right. There's not a big demand for commuter transportation between those places. There's just not.
Right. And light rail, as romantic or as sexy as it sounds to these Democratic politicians, because it's like, oh, this is a great way of inexpensively, in general, getting places point A to point B that aren't covered by other parts of transportation. I've ridden enough light rail across the country. It's just like, why doesn't anybody talk about how much money light rail loses all over the country? Because there's very little policing of it. There are no fare gates in most of these situations. You get to a light rail station, you get to the platform, you buy a ticket or you don't, and you get on a train and you ride it for whatever length of time. The chances that there'll be a metropolitan, transportation officer that will check for your ticket is very low. And people know that. They learn that very, very early on. And so, buying a ticket, no, it's like, we'll take our chances. And 9 times out of 10, if not 9.9 times out of 10, they're going to win. And so the system is transporting people for $0, but the taxpayers are forking over a lot of money.
Right. So people can have cool train stations.
Right. Right. I mean,
that no one also goes to, right?
Yeah.
Also have no one there.
Yeah. So it's just kind of a nonsensical thing. It provides a great source of transportation for homeless people who have had encountered numerous times on these light rail systems that just, they get on, they sit in the back of a train and nobody bothers them. Not even the transportation police will really bother them. Right. In the meantime, they're there and they're dirty, they're smelly, and sometimes they're out of their mind and they're disruptive and stuff like that. So it's just not what it was, envisioned by politicians. But but like everything else, Democrats who pass this stuff, and fund, say, oh, we're going to spend this money. A lot of times, by the time it gets built, they've retired or something like that, because it takes so long to get going and doing it. It's like, this is a project they could say, oh, look at all this wonderful stuff we've done. And then when the real costs come in, a lot of them have already moved on or done something else, right, and they're no longer attached to the legislation system that is now governing that. So it's, I've ridden enough light rail. I'm just like, more government waste. It's just not what we need.
Right. That's right. Get yourself to work.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So there's some progress on the Iran negotiations, or at least Trump was saying that. Stock market likes the potential for that news, though he did make a strike, and there's movement apparently to try to maybe unblock the Strait of Hormuz, and so oil prices are gyrating a little bit. So prices have actually come down nationwide about 10 cents in the last week or so, which is good. They're still way too high, but At this point, you kind of take whatever you can get until they can unblock that and get more oil flowing and start to get prices back to where they were, because transportation costs affect everything. I mean,
Right.
you
Exactly.
and I, can drive around and going to ball games or going to our various assignments, or we're doing whatever. Uh, People commuting, people, that are in their cars all the time, it starts to eat away, at everything. And then, the grapes that you buy and I buy and the strawberries, they can go up in price because
Right.
they got to get transported and it
Yeah.
costs money.
Every gets above 110, every product in America has to change its price.
Yeah. So, um, are we getting closer to the end, do you think now, or?
Well, I think that they have decided that the new Khomeini can speak for them, right? So now it's an interesting choice, because the most hawks would say in the U.S., if you know where this guy is, kill him. No, he's hidden better than the others are, obviously, because they've taken some steps after the first 3 rounds of leaders were wiped out. So him saying it's okay now kind of does equal it's okay, right? So you do know, because a long time the problem was we didn't know who we were negotiating with. So now it has kind of become clear to some extent who we're negotiating with. So the next thing is like, what are we negotiating? And what Trump had was, we want all the dust. We want all the nuclear stuff you have, all the material, all the fissile material, all the centrifuges, all the equipment, all the launchers, all that. We take it back to us and we'll deal with it. And if you do that, and we know that you're severe about it, then we will start easing sanctions on you, let you have some of your money back that we have frozen, so forth and so on. The left is out there saying, well, this is, what JITPOA was, and why do they just stick with that? Well, no, it wasn't, because, we're not sending them pallets of cash, right? We're not giving them anything until they have done their part of the bargain, right? This was send pallets of cash, hope for better things later, right? Which never can, which they use the money to develop the, missiles. And for me, like, this whole thing changed when they shot the missile at Diego Garcia, because that means that, like, we're not that sure of their capabilities, right? We thought we were, between us and Mossad and our friends in the Middle East and so forth. We thought we had a pretty good handle on what Iran was capable of doing militarily. That showed that we don't. So how much else is in the realm of possible error here? What else do we not know? Who knows, right? So that means it has to be dealt with now, because you can't suspend it, you can't put it off. You have to make sure that they can't shoot nuclear weapons, because they have said pretty consistently that if they get this figured out, they're going to shoot one at Israel as quickly as they can. So it's hard to keep Israel is what, 12, 15 miles wide at some points, right? It's not a big country. It's going to be hard to shoot a nuke that hurts Israel. It doesn't hurt anything around it, right? So, they do that. It's a region-wide, if not worldwide, war. Okay. And so Trump is trying to head that off. And I think he's right to do so. And I think he is to the point where they can show good faith that they're playing by the rules and going to try to do this, be good partners in this, or he's going to finish the job. He's really tried to avoid killing innocent people and destroying Iran, the country. Its military capabilities, yes, but the country itself, he's tried to preserve.
All right, so we're near the end of May, so we've got June, July, August, September, October. We've got a little over 5 months or whatever it is before the midterm elections. Does Trump need to have a resolution of the situation in Iran before then? Would that help the Republicans in the midterms if this is resolved and behind us, rather than still hanging over the Republicans?
I mean, the sooner he can get it resolved, the better, obviously, because as soon as it's resolved, or even faints at being resolved, price of gas will go down possibly $2 a gallon, right? It'll be down into the mid twos, right? It was the supply that's out there that's being, put into the chain now, plus what Iran will add when it gets back online and can legally, move oil to other people, you're going to have a great decrease in the price of oil per barrel. So, the quicker that happens, obviously, the better. If it happened, tomorrow, somehow, right, and you could get the price back to something, by the end of June, right, then most of summer vacation is with pretty cheap gas. Everybody gets to go. And, the economy will, of course, fill in, right? You give the economy dramatically cheaper fuel costs, you're going to get economic growth. There's a lot of economic growth that's kind of pent up right now because of all this. And all that starts to happen, and people get jobs, and wages go up, and inflation goes down. And, they're already pretty close to clinching, holding both houses in Congress. And that would make it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even if a thing ended tomorrow, I mean, just because of the way things have been, it takes a little bit of time for everything to kind of get straightened out and get back down to where it was. But it would start to have an effect,
right,
and move in that
and
direction.
some of it would be a very quick, like within days, you would see some relief in gas prices.
Right. I mean, yeah, we've seen as it's bounced around and, dropped a little bit, when there was hope for an end, prices, would drop maybe a nickel or 10 cents. When it looked like it wasn't going to happen, it goes back up. So they've held kind of in this range overall, for that. And if you're in California, you're paying even more through the nose than you were before, because it's just, you've got so much regulation in California. Your gas prices are not even close to being realistic.
And that's not really even the big problem anymore, right? The big problem is they just closed the last refinery in California. So all the oil in California is trucked in. So where is it trucked in? Over the Rocky Mountains, which is a difficult truck ride in the summer and even worse in the winter. California, I don't think, can meaningfully go on trucking in all the oil. I don't think that can continue. They're going to have to do something to unregulate or get somebody to reopen or something, but they have to be able to refine oil in California somewhere, right? There's just too many drivers, 40 million people, 50 million people in that state. You got to have some oil somewhere for them. So, it's a bigger problem for them than it is anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what, if it's anything close to what, I don't know if that's I-80 or whatever it is, but I know that, I've driven on I-80 before just to go from Iowa into Utah, and we did that during the summer, and that is a dangerous road in the summer. It's horrible in the winter, and what you see when you drive it in the summer, are lots of jackknife tractor trailers that have just been there for months. They're off to the side of the road, and you're just like, this is amazing how much this happens. I mean, there's all kinds of warnings and all kinds of things that I guess they try to do to help make sure that you don't happen. But the weather can get pretty bad, and if because of the weather out in the West, I mean, in the mountains, sometimes, I mean, it can snow through April, May, and even parts of June. So you're not out
snow in August. I got snowed on in Montana in August. Montana and Idaho. Like August 6th, right? Not even late August. But yeah, I mean, that's, you get high enough, you're subject to snow all year round. And that's a long way out there, right? It's not that, every one of those trucks is making a long trip. So that itself is expensive. So, California is hoisted on its own petard. They got to, it's like the Alcoholics Anonymous say, it's like first you got to hit rock bottom. Until you hit rock bottom, right, then you talk yourself into keep going with this stuff. But, they got to hit rock bottom, and there's some evidence that they're closing in on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, you can be the most careful driver in the world, but the thing is that between road conditions and other drivers, you only have so much control over what happens, in poor weather conditions. So it's anything can happen, even though you've taken as much precaution as you possibly can.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, California is just amazing in how they've just chased out businesses with impunity, and without. I mean, they're just that's why why do you have net migration, outbound net migrations? Because there's no one wants to work there and pay the taxes. Businesses don't want to be there and pay the taxes and deal with the regulation. It's just
No, they're losing 4 seats
yeah.
in the next census. Texas is getting 4 seats. New York is losing 4 seats. Florida is getting 4 seats. So the power in the country is literally moving from the blue states to the red states. I mean, and that's because the people are moving from the blue states to the red states. And California has every advantage, right? It has every kind of terrain you could want. If you want a mountain business, you can go there. If you want a seaside business, you can go there. If you want manufacturing, they have a big manufacturing base and a lot of qualified labor. They have, great, terrific weather in most of the state, and they just, they fail because of the arrogance of the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of miss traveling to California. I mean, like I said, great weather. They have some great food out there and
Oh yeah, great food.
entertainment and all kinds of things out there, but it is just such a pain in the neck now. I mean, it just for businesses and to have to survive and all of this. But yeah, they're and it's kind of like the politicians out there are still all these Democrats are still blind to the policies that they have created, how much damage they've done to their own economy.
Right. And you can see, you can see that in this, like LA, these elections they're having, right? There's a Republican who's like on the late night shows of Fox News or one of the Fox sub networks or whatever, who's the leader in the race, right? And now you have a guy running for mayor of Los Angeles, a Republican white guy who's, threatening to win. This guy, like we were talking about this last night, he's doing some really good stuff. Whoever's programming him, it's a unique situation. So like you can't take everything he's doing and graft it elsewhere, right? But like one of the things he's doing is he has a power washer. And he has a stencil. So he power washes his logo onto the sidewalks around LA. Okay, so the only clean part of the sidewalk is his logo. And the only way to eliminate his logo is to clean the rest of the sidewalk. So it's all equally clean, right? And of course, Karen Bass ain't going to clean those sidewalks. That's why he knew to do this. Because, like, everybody's like, this place is dirty. Why don't we just clean it up? Very simple thing. And she can't answer it, right? She cannot answer it. But that's one where I think people have looked at that and the fire, her mishandling of the Palisades fire. She is not, she cannot pretend to be competent anymore. So now you're saying, okay, she's friendlier to immigrants, right? She's friendlier to criminals. She's less for, deporting people who have no business here than the opponent. Okay, and to some people in Los Angeles that will appeal, right? It's a immigrant city to a larger extent than a lot of major American cities are. It's near the border and so forth. Did you know that, like, from San Diego, downtown San Diego to downtown Tijuana is 16 miles?
Yeah, I knew it was pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, that is, you think about like the change and the, and it's like, we were talking about this the other day. When you go through El Paso on I-10, El Paso is not a wealthy boutique community, but it's a city in Texas, right? And you go through there and you can, on I-10, you can see over into Juarez. You can see across the river into Mexico. And I mean, it's just a few hundred feet away. And, it's a different world. Like there's, shanties built into the sides of hills and stuff. It's like, it's as bad as you can imagine. And my kids saw that, their jaws dropped. I'm like, wow, yeah, the whole rest of the world, a lot of the rest of the world, this is okay. This is what they did. So, it's a real eye opener, and it's a real stark choice for voters. So, as for Los Angeles, have they hit bottom? California, have they hit bottom? They're now being offered some credible alternatives to, continuing the same policies. It's not joke screaming candidates or, rhinos who aren't conservative all like Schwarzenegger, right? Actual Republicans. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And also, when you consider like a lot of people have been deported, a lot of people have self-deported. They've cleaned up like 1.1 million names off the voter rolls that didn't belong there in California. So, the electorate that these people are facing is way different than the one the last election faced. So much more favorable to Republicans. I mean, again, it's like Westmore. They may not win. Some habits are hard to break, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember, it's been decades now, but I still remember, driving down a freeway, and it was down in Southern California and probably down in the San Diego area. And they, came across a road sign. And what is the road sign? It's a yellow road sign with a family, right? So it's basically saying, watch out for families crossing the freeway. Well, who are those families? They're illegals, Yeah. I mean, the government.
Hey, why are you crossing a freeway?
They're acknowledging that there are people scurrying across the border and then across the freeway in California. Yeah. And I'm
one of the things, like my friend in San Diego told me this, that they're kind of cautious about building too close to the border because it's been so dug out with caves and whatnot for people to sneak in that the ground's not steady anymore. Wow. Tunnels all over the place, big network of tunnels in the rock. Yeah. So when you're moving rock around, all kind of crazy stuff starts to happen.
Amazing. All right, well, we'll continue to talk here about more things. I just briefly want to talk about this Ebola outbreak in the Congo. I don't know. I mean, I kind of thought that things like this were relatively under control, but I guess not, obviously, by what's been going on there. But I heard on a podcast, ABC News podcast, that they were talking with a doctor or whatever, is just that it's most contagious at the point of death. So one of the problems they're facing there is just that families want to cart off the bodies of their loved ones for burial, but then this is when the body is highly infectious. They don't understand, and then it can spread even further as a result of that. So that there have been reports, I guess, that they have been burning like medical tents down to prevent families from claiming the bodies because they don't want it to spread. So this is they're struggling there of trying to try to get a handle of this. But I kind of think about some of the movies I've seen, over the years from Hollywood about, Patient Zero and all of these things, and Ebola and stuff like this. And, this is a problem, and of course, what's happening is the media's jumped in on this and said, well, it's the dismantling of, U.S. aid, that is also contributing to this. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Well, I think what's contributing to this is that, Bill Cassidy got slaughtered, Thomas Massey got slaughtered, John Cornyn got slaughtered, MAGA ain't going anywhere in 2026. And these guys are trying to figure out, we need to scramble the game on the elections again. That's not why there's an Ebola outbreak. That's why you're hearing the things about it that you heard about. One of those movies you're talking about is, of course, The Hot Zone. Do you remember The Hot Zone?
Yeah.
Movie? And, of course, based here in Reston, like right around the corner from me. There's even a strain of Ebola known as Ebola restonius, because it was a strain found here. Yeah. So we're Ebola City. They have knocked that building down and plowed it under so nothing can grow there again. It's still a parking lot.
Wow.
So,
I,
yeah.
I don't think I don't think I remember that part of it in terms of Rustin. Man, that's that's really kind of unusual for us to see it hit like us like that.
Yeah.
In real terms, and not something that's just Hollywood made up kind of a thing
Yeah.
too.
And most of the time, like bio type of research like that is your side of the river.
Yeah,
The 270 corridor. You don't usually see that kind of stuff in Northern Virginia, but
that's right. That's right. Well, hopefully they'll get a handle on this because that stuff spreads like wildfire, and that's not good for the Congo or for other countries. It's just you've got to find a way to contain it so they don't spread beyond the Congo. And it's like I think everybody's pretty much like you can't leave the country, right, or something at this point.
right. You can't leave the country, and
So
you're trying to keep down the panic too, because that's its own set of problems.
yeah, yeah. All right. So, and you just mentioned, some of the things that have been happening here in recent primaries. Obviously, we had the big one yesterday in Texas, and shockingly, John Cornyn got just wiped off the map. I mean,
Wow, it's 2-1. Yeah.
oh yeah, and I mean, I think the polls had shown it was it was maybe going to be close, but Cornyn had the edge, and it was completely the opposite situation. So Paxton is the nominee against James Tallarico. I mean, this is not the kind of candidate that I want for the Republican Party. I mean, I think it gives Tallarico a little bit of an opening. I don't think it's a big enough of an opening for him to get elected. But the Democrats, maybe I mean, the Republicans have to probably spend a lot of money to make sure Paxton does win the seat. On the other hand, Democrats may wind up spending a lot of money to lose the seat in the end. I don't know.
Well, I think it's going to become, Tallarico is at his high water mark in the polling, right? He's looking good, right? Because there was not until yesterday, you didn't know really who he was going to run against. And you definitely didn't know that Paxton was going to win by 28 points. I think it was 64-36 was the final read, which was shocking even to me. But it's like I was thinking about this earlier. They should call. Who they should call for political advice on this is Hillary, because you're sitting with a guy who a bimbo eruption could happen at any time, right? Some other girl could come out of the closet and say, she'd had this or that relations with Paxton, and it'd be hard to disprove. And even if you could disprove it, most people wouldn't believe it anyway because there's a pattern been established and all that kind of stuff. So, what would Hillary tell? I mean, she's not going to help a Republican, but, she's probably got the best advice out there on, how do you manage this? Because, the scandals we know about have been managed, right? They obviously didn't slow him down. And anybody who wins the Republican nomination by 28 points in Texas is probably going to win the general, right? Especially when the other guy is, as they say, low T Tallarico, Trump calls it, believes that, there's at least 6 genders and Jesus is non-binary and all this kind of stuff. So,
yeah, and he wants to eat less meat in a state of
no meat. Yeah, he's vegan. It's like, how do you?
Well, yeah, I mean,
how do you campaign in Texas?
It's a little bit unknown whether or not he's vegan. He's trying to couch this as not being vegan as much as that I want to reduce my meat consumption.
Okay.
Read that how you want.
You live in Texas. Plus, the modern nutrition stuff you hear is eat meat. Meat's one of the few things you eat that is kind of unalloyed good for you. So I don't know. I don't think that the guy can win, but it is a risk with Paxton, right? Because you don't know what else is going to come out. Probably it's fine, but I read 2 or 3 months ago that Tallarico wants it to be Paxton because he has dirt on Paxton no one's ever seen, and he can drop it at the appropriate time. We'll see. I think he better, make his play pretty quick, because I think pretty soon he's going to sort of disappear behind the horizon. If I'm Democrats in Texas, I'm giving all kind of people advice. I'm not going to take my advice today, but if I was Democrats in Texas, I would quit looking for the next Beto O'Rourke and I would start looking for the next Ann Richards, because they've tried everything they could with men, right? They had Colin Allred, who was a military guy, and rough, tough dude. He got slaughtered. Beto got slaughtered. Angry liberal man got slaughtered. This little guy is probably going to get slaughtered. It's like they don't like a Democrat man in Texas. They can't find the right flavor, right? So far, it just has not come up for them. But I think like a good sort of sassy woman who could really do good sound bites, right? It might be really hard, because you can only go so hard against her, and that might be their best way to go at it.
Yeah,
I don't know of any women there.
Ann Richards was a very interesting politician, right? I mean,
yeah,
she did have the sound bites, the what was it, the silver boot in his mouth kind of a thing. Comment,
yeah,
I think it was.
Millions.
Yeah,
his name was Clayton Williams, her opponent.
Oh yeah, Clayton Williams,
nicknamed him Blatant Millions. There was a thing about Cry More Tears and all the prostitutes in El Paso flushing at the same time or something like that. I mean, she had some like ways with words, but it froze the issue for people. She was very effective in that state.
Yeah,
but the other thing about that is, though, she's also, they always say, where would Reagan fit in today's party? Where would Ann Richards fit, right? Because that was a different kind of Democrat back then. It was not victimhood. There were 4 things that we weren't for, but it wasn't because they were victimized. Like, they just had another way of looking at it, right? And so I don't know how tolerant she would be for the way Democrat political aspersions or ambitions get expressed now.
Yeah, no, I mean, politics has changed a great deal over the last 20 years.
It really has.
I mean, we could go through a long list of Democrats, who, where would they be as well? Not just Reagan on the Republican side, but Democrats, and where would they be in today's Democrat world? And it's a completely different game now. It's very polarized. You've got this, it's not even, I don't even think it's progressive wing anymore. You get far left communists, like with AOC and the whole squad people. This is, they have no tolerance for anyone that doesn't espouse their point of view. So it's just very interesting. So we also saw a little bit of results of the redistricting last night, with Al Green losing the primary in a new district to another Democrat. And so there won't be any haranguing from Al Green in Congress going forward. I'm not going to miss Al Green. I don't think there's only going to miss Al Green.
Fewer impeachments, at least.
That's good. Yeah.
I think he offered 8 articles of impeachment against Trump.
Yeah.
He can't even get the Democrats to vote for him. He's actually, I must admit, he's a Louisiana guy. He's from New Orleans. He moved to Houston. But yeah, he was an interesting guy. He, he was totally for something. I think the Democrats I know in Texas would tell me, God bless him, but don't hold us responsible for it. I got you. We got a few like that.
I get peppered all the time when I'm watching stuff on streaming video. So David Trone runs a lot of commercials that appear on these things, and so his new commercials now are hammering away, at April, Delaney, right? And so his whole thing now is to beat her and to win, is that he claims that she has voted with Trump, with the Republican 22% of the time. I have no idea if that's even close to being true, but his tagline really is that we're not here to vote with the administration. We're here to fight against it. That's his thing. In Maryland it may work. I don't know, but
he's in 6, right?
Yeah, like he's going to try to get back into 6, right?
So 6, for people that don't know, that's it's supposedly the Western Maryland seat. It's the Maryland Panhandle. So a lot of these places are, closer to Pittsburgh than they are to Annapolis.
Right, and it
And
dips
way
into
up in the
Montgomery
mountains.
County.
Yeah, coal miner type people, hardworking people, and it was a conservative district until the conservative speaker or leader of the Republican leader in the House was from there, Cass Taylor, years ago, and then it was represented by Roscoe Bartlett, who was the last MD, I think, in the House, and they redistricted him out by adding in voters from Montgomery County, which is way on down the road and does not share the interest. So one of the most naked gerrymanders. That's why every time I hear them poking at us about gerrymanders, I'm like, look at Maryland 6th, and people talk about the lobster district, right, on the other side, what they do to keep it, to keep a second Democrat from winning on the eastern side of the state. But to me, the Maryland 6 was a worse ripoff, because it was just, we're going to go down and put completely unrelated people in this district until we get enough to force him out.
Yeah, and it worked. I mean, poor Roscoe was campaigning in Montgomery County, when that first happened, and there was just no base there for him.
Right,
I mean,
that's right.
It was,
people didn't even know who he was.
Yeah, no,
he'd been in Congress 20 years, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and now the guy's completely off the grid.
yeah. Go find him now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very hard to find. Just Politico found out a few years ago. All right, we've got to quickly kind of keep moving through things here. Real quick, thoughts about what you've heard about the Pope's encyclical on artificial intelligence. So I understand it's a 42,000 word document. So it takes quite a bit of reading to get through. But I mean, he's kind of warning about the dangers of AI. But not necessarily saying it's the worst thing in the world either. I mean, it's it's inevitable, right? I mean, it's here. Right. You just need to use it wisely, I guess.
Yeah, I think that the thing that I've been thinking about the most is how inevitable all this is, right? I've been discussing with one of my girl I grew up with in Louisiana about AI. About the data centers, right? And she's like, "Oh, we got to not have any data centers." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know that we still can not have data centers, right? Because we've said, okay, we want AI. We're going to use AI for all these things. We're kind of tied into it. So now you need all this data production, right? You need to do it. You got to do it somewhere. Like I think 2/3 of the traffic in the U.S. routes through a data center in Loudoun County, like by Dulles Airport, like 7-8 miles from me, right? It's the biggest one in the world. Okay. And that's prime real estate where it is. And so now like Prince William County, which is, which was, had an urban core or, a suburban core, I guess you would say, but it's basically an urban core. And then it went out into some land that was less densely populated. And now a lot of that land, would be part of growth for Prince William, which is rapidly growing county, but it's being cordoned off for data centers. I think they got 3 or 4 out there. So we can't, we're not going to turn off AI, right? It's, and I think that's one of the things the Pope talks about is like, it's not going to go away. So you're going to have to make your peace with it, and you need to approach it ethically. And we need to all look at it and say, we're going to use it. We're not going to use it to deceive each other, right? Because it's certainly capable of doing that. And, good luck. But, I think that's the challenge ahead. And it's going to be lying to us in ways we've never been lied to before. And our ability to detect those lies is unknown.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out just for this show how to incorporate it in the sense of helping draft, say, the things that we talk about, or even the show notes I want to include for the video. And it's not quite, I think it's my own ineptitude in dealing with it, because I haven't quite found the right formula yet. It spits some things out, and I'm like, well, that's interesting, but that's not what I want, yet. So I haven't found the right things yet to make AI work for me overall. But except for the fact that I think, if I write something um, to proof and edit, it's actually kind of helpful because I think it helps with structure and brings up a few other ideas sometimes. And like, so that
I've been writing for a living since I was 14. I'm not turning it over to AI.
well, I mean, I don't have a proofreader,
Yeah,
and I'm bound to make a mistake here and there.
yeah,
So I
that's true.
figure, like, it doesn't hurt to run it through there to make sure that to pick up and correct any mistakes that I've made, any typos or whatever, so that I can look at that. And so it's that it can be helpful with, but I'm still not. A lot of people put a lot of medical information. They throw a lot of stuff into these AI, chatbots to say, evaluate this for me, like medical information. I'm like, I'm not comfortable enough with that yet. It's like I don't know that I don't know where that information really is going.
Right.
Yeah.
The other
So
thing is that, like, the thing MRC is working on is who's inputting the data that AI spits out, right? Who gave it the answers to your questions, right? And the answers are pretty discouraging. The left is trying to get it to where the first rewrite of history is their rewrite, is what they said, right? Not us, not mixed, what they said, and AI is a key tool in them doing that.
yeah, I threw this on the list just because I saw it this morning because I did not know this. It probably makes a lot of sense to me, but they had an article about Phoenix, Arizona, has been the call center capital of the United States, and AI is decimating that business. And so jobs are disappearing now in Phoenix. People who were able to earn a decent living are now finding that their companies that they work for are now turning over a lot of their call center functions to AI. Now that can be sometimes that's kind of maddening with dealing with AI. I already hate telephone, the whole telephone tree thing where you call in and you have to go through, we have to answer so many questions. I got to do that before you can actually get a real person or get an answer. AI is being used in a lot of drive-throughs. When you pull up to a McDonald's or something like that, some places have, it's not a person that does it, but it's an AI that takes your order to try to process the order and things like that because of a labor shortage, in that industry. But yeah, but it's definitely real in terms of there are jobs that are disappearing because AI is come in there, and so that that also means that increases the thirst for data centers.
Right.
And I don't. You can ban a data center in one town, but they'll just find another town. They'll find another way to do it. This is AI is growing and it requires a lot of compute power, and I don't know how you just I don't know how you stop that. It's
Well, here's one way. I think it's Richland Parish in Louisiana. It's between Monroe and Vicksburg, which is northeastern Louisiana. It's the Delta, very poor counties, and sparsely populated. They got their first check from their AI, the fees the AI has to pay the county to operate the data center, and it was 4 times the amount of money that the county had. So they're like, oh, okay. So that's one way to do it. And Richland Parish, there's some good farmland there, obviously, because it's riverside loam. But if they can get more yield, more money out of this than that, then they absolutely should do it because that's a really good place to put them. They're not sparsely populated, and there's not wealth is not being generated any other way. So
well, it's like solar farms. I mean, these places generate income where nothing was generated before for a
right.
lot of areas, and it's a boon for a lot of places, even though it's questionable in terms of what the value is of having all that land taken up by solar panels or whatnot. All right, look, well, I need to keep moving along here. I threw this in here and I didn't bring my notes, which was my fault. But so Angela Davis, who you may remember
Mm-hmm.
as a communist,
Right.
during the Vietnam War days, never changed, So, we're going back, almost 60 years in time, in terms of when she was at her peak for activism and all the terrible things that she had done. So she made a commencement speech at a place called Pitzer College, which apparently is part of the whole like the Claremont College group or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Now she taught there apparently before the seniors voted for her to speak, and she spoke at their commencement in 2012. And I decided to spend some time yesterday and to listen to her rambling commencement talk, which is time that I will never get back. Uh, and it was a rant. She didn't refer to Trump by name, but she just kind of she made reference to the president of the United States or type of thing like this and something. But she was you know part of the bottom line here is on capitalism. Is that capitalism is responsible for racism. This seemed to be a big part of her message. And the students, I guess because it's such a liberal school, I mean, they just sat there quietly and everything. At the beginning, they all stood up and applauded her before she even began the speech. But they all took that, and they applaud. They gave her a good round of applause after. And I'm like, wow, okay, it's just you've got this communist, just feeding you all this pap, and you're just soaking it all in. It's like another problem with higher education here is that what are these people doing on our campuses talking to our students like this? It's like this is.
Well, the problem is that none of the students, are equipped to stand up and say that's nonsense, right? It's like there's nothing racist about it. It's like the people who win, and they're all different colors, and the people who lose, and they're all different colors, and it's usually for the same reasons that also cut across race. So. Yeah, I didn't see the speech, but what bothers me about it is like, the brains are being conditioned, right? Like we talked about the phone apps, right? The phone apps, you have the Apple News thing on your phone, right? You're never getting the conservative view of anything on that, right? Zero. It's not coming. Okay, so. All the people who that's how they get their news, that's all they know. And you can't, you startle them. You're plowing into their cognitive dissonance if you say anything else. And so and there's real danger to this, right? Because people think some very wrong things and they're ready to do some very bad things policy wise because they don't know any better.
Yeah. I mean, to think that almost 60 years after the Vietnam War and her peak of her activism and everything like this, that she's out there still influencing young minds.
It's kind of scary, but I mean, they're young minds, and they get influenced again, and most of them don't say that's stupid.
Yeah, I just I don't know, but I guess the only good thing about it is that it's a small college.
Right. That's right.
There are not that many students
Not
graduating.
that many of them. That's right.
Not that many of them. All right. Quickly wrap up here. I had to throw this out here because it is incredible. We can do this here. So there is the Ferrari EV, only $640,000.
Wow.
Okay. Now if you're Ferrari, you're making cars that are what, $250,000, $300,000 to $500,000 or more anyway. That's your combustible engine car. So your EV is going to cost more anyway. But there was a lot of social media comment apparently about it. A lot of people ridiculing Ferrari for doing this. Now the reports are too that Ferrari did this really only to satisfy the EU and requirements about fuel economy and everything like this.
Yeah.
So not that they expect to sell a lot of them. I mean, maybe they'll sell them to a few Chinese or some rich, sheikh or somebody like that. But the market's probably not going to be huge for a $640,000 EV, but it does carry a Ferrari nameplate, so there will be some who want that status. But for anybody who's ridiculed an Elon Musk for his vehicles and everything like this. At least his vehicles are priced reasonably, or they're trying to find the right market for theirs.
He's intentionally in this business. He's trying
Yeah,
to be good at this business.
yeah. Ferrari has just created this thing to satisfy the imperious EU, which I hate. I hate those people who run the EU.
Yeah.
I really do.
But that's another one. They're on their way to rock bottom, and you can't change them until they get there.
Right. And then last, I saw a note too that New York hotel workers have received a pay increase, avoiding a strike. So New York, they have the highest average hotel rate, and you strip out resorts, because that always skews it. $334 a night in New York.
Average hotel. That's about right. We try to go up there and play basketball in New Jersey, right? There's all these tournaments like Wildwood, New Jersey, and we go look at, it's like 3 times we've tried to do it, and we backed off every time because we go looking for hotel rooms, and they're like $650 a night, and it's like you can't, you usually got to stay 2 nights at least. And so you can't do that to the parents. Like some of them, they don't care, but most of them, $1,300 for the weekend. And that's not getting you into the game, which is now, it's a big issue in youth sports now that like they're charging a ton of money to get into these things. Like most of the ones that I play in, it's like, $40 for the weekend or $25 per day, and so that's a lot of money to go watch your 5th grader bounce a ball up and down the court. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is $334 is the current rate. Put a little bit, maybe it goes to $350 or more or whatever, because the hotel workers, just a continuing spiral of, the unions and the liberals who say, we need to have the living wage and all this stuff. At some point in time, I mean, it's got to choke the hotel industry. I mean, it's like how many, you've already talked about, it's like, well, we can't afford to pay these rates. I'm amazed that anybody can afford on a regular basis to pay or willing to pay $334 a night. I'm certainly not willing to do that.
I have to go to New York, I stay in Newark and ride the train in, because it's the hotel's 170, so it's not so bad.
Yeah. I'm I keep thinking about when I used to do a lot of travel for AIM and stuff like that. Just like, my thing was to try to keep my, around the States, is to try to keep my hotel cost to $100 or less per night. And a lot of the conventions, the rates were that way anyway, but sometimes I could get a better rate, a couple blocks away. But those rates are long gone, right? I think we spent, it wasn't bad for Korea. I think we spent $150 to $175 a night, in Korea, but it was still, for me, it was just kind of like, okay, I just have to resign myself that, spending $150 to $200 or more a night, that is the norm now.
That's what it costs.
I'm
going to up near Lancaster, Pennsylvania this weekend for basketball, and I think it's 180 or 90 a night, and that's that's not in the middle of the big city.
It's sticker shock. I mean, I just, when you think about what it was before, and now you look at today, and you're like, oh, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's right.
So, all right. Good show. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. We're 250 years strong coming up. I love the
By the way, I saw the Virginia 250 truck museum thing the other day. They're always going to make them a certain amount woke, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the general idea that I'm starting to see signs and things pop up about America 250. I'm not going to be around for America 300, so
probably with you on that one.
This is it for me.
This is it. Enjoy.
All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us, and then we'll see you again next week.